we're talking about using Blogger in the classroom, and this session is basically aimed at beginners and intermediates. So if you haven't, I could ask for a show of hands if you have a Blogger, if you have your own blog set up already, if you know of teachers in your schools who have blogs set up already. So if you wouldn't mind just waving your hand if that's the case. Yes? So a few of you are already competent bloggers. Blogger is not the only blogging option, blogging tool. So this presentation has been shared with everybody, and you can find it through your drive. Just do a search for Getting Started with Blogger. And you'll be able to access these two links on the bottom. One is a blog I started very recently just for communications with staff at my school. And the second one is more a blog that I keep from time to time that addresses a variety of pedagogical questions and explorations. So you might be wondering why blog, or if you're speaking to teachers about blogging, I generally start off by talking about it from what it actually means for students. So in terms of motivation for students, allowing students who often sit at the back of the classroom and seem very timid perhaps and shy. I've found in my experience that some of those students are very vocal online. So blogs are spaces for them to have a voice heard. Collaboration is a huge aspect with Blogger, and we'll cover that in a minute. Peer feedback amongst yourselves as teachers, amongst all of us, as well as student to students in your class. Ideally, students to students between our schools, particularly now that we've got CloudShare and ability to collaborate amongst schools, so breaking down the barriers of classroom walls as such. Promoting discussion, of course, improving reading and writing skills. So for primaries, it could just be a few simple sentences, adjusting font, scaffolding, and for secondaries as well, equally important. Connecting with real life and real world audiences so that students are allowed to experience authenticity and feedback from the world, from anybody in the world. So again, there we'll address some privacy settings and perhaps concerns, and therefore belonging to a community of global learners. Anything we do online, it's not necessarily just a blog, but just to keep that perspective in mind, I suppose. And for us as teachers, we're constantly building and connecting with each other and building our professional learning networks. So on the bottom of this presentation is a classroom, some really good tips I found on classroom blogging. So if you want to extend some of those ideas, they're there by teachers for teachers. So feel free to access that presentation as we go on your laptops. So in terms of a blogger, what it looks like, so for those of you who've already got a blogger blog, you would be familiar with this. You create your new blog. You can have many blogs. So for your students, they could have subject-specific blogs, or they could have one blog that uses tags to identify different subjects. So as a teacher, you would just go to that particular tag to access your English or your maths blog posts. Or you can split them up and ask students to create new blogs for the different topics or subject areas. And there are some of those settings on the side. So really the idea of clicking and exploring, and anything can be moved and deleted and refreshed. Just in terms of starting a new blog, the big idea is really about your concept, what the blog is for, and something to push with the students. What is the blog going to be communicating, and what ideas are represented? Greg Swanson, who's sitting just over here, has a great blog on apps, using apps in education. So a lot of iPad apps and useful apps, great tips and sheets and ideas for teachers to use in the classroom. And it doesn't necessarily, I find, it doesn't necessarily only apply to iPads, using iPads, but also CloudShare and collaborating online. Just 4 points to consider that I tend to keep in the back of my head is the context of the blog, the audience, so who will be participating in using the blog, reading it or writing the blog. Have a catchy title. It's always good for people to remember your blog easily, and then to consider the settings on your blog before anything else. Are there any questions at this point or issues you'd like to raise? No? Okay. If you think of something, just butt in. Okay, so customizing your blog, title of your blog. Obviously, it's a bit tricky. Sometimes fun titles get taken right away and addresses get taken, but you can customize your domain later. Think about the subject and the topic that the blog is for when you're creating the title so that it's identifiable by a search, particularly in CloudShare as we're sharing with each other. How well does the blog title suit the context? So that might help get that catchy title happening, and inserting your blog address is important to keep in mind that the blog name shouldn't be something huge and long and difficult for students particularly to remember. So keeping the context in mind again. When you create your new blog, it basically comes up, this is just a test one that I created for today. It's listed in your Blogger homepage, and you can see on the bottom there's another blogger associated with my CEO Sid account, the eLearning one, which I linked at the front of this presentation. So when you go into that test, you'll basically see a blog overview. So it lists all the tools on the left-hand side, so your posts, your pages, so you can have separate pages for separate subjects, and you can link those posts within the pages. It might be a nice way to organize a blog. The comments and all the settings that go with comments. Google+, which is obviously not enabled for students, but it's fantastic for us as teachers to share with each other, including Google+ widgets. Can go through the list of stats and earnings, and layout, probably template and settings would be some to customize. And also updates. I know we all get bombarded with emails, so think about how the updates will be delivered to you. Think about whether you want those updates and comments to, particularly if it's a student-shared blog, whether the comments need to be moderated before you approve them to be published to other students or to each other. So some of those to keep in mind in terms of your audience. This slide talks a little bit about privacy, whether you want your blog to be listed in Google blog listings or not, and whether you want it to be found by search engines. Generally, I encourage students and teachers to share, but again, you do need to consider privacy settings at your school and or at our schools really, and the publications notes that students sign. So I found in terms of working with certain classes that there are those students whose parents have also signed permission notes that identify that their photographs or then full names are not to be disclosed, not only to the world, but also to an audience beyond the school. So that's something to keep in mind, just to make sure that that you're doing everything right there. I know that's something teachers ask me a lot. A really great tip here is the adding of students as authors. If you're using a blog as a collaborative space, and I've tried this once. It was quite fun for students because they seemed to be, the group I was working with seemed to be mostly used to working with their own online space only, so their own Tumblr space or their own blog. So it was interesting to see how they approach collaboration on a blog. So what I might do is just demonstrate how to add that, and also how to add permissions for blog readers. So I'll just switch the screen and go through that. So if you should be able to see that clearly. If you scroll down in settings, under basics, under permissions, in blog authors, you can add anybody to be an author of the blog. So for example, I might add Greg to this blog.
And you'll notice that unfortunately it doesn't auto-populate,
yep,
unlike when you're sharing a doc or a site, so you need to know the person's email address.
So you invite authors.
So I'll need to go and accept that.
Yep. And you can also edit who the blog readers are. This is particularly important if your principal, for example, if principals or exec members at the school have decided to keep a blog. I know my principal keeps a blog just to update staff on staff matters, and keeping it unpublished, perhaps even not published to other schools, depends on what the content is. But this is the way to adjust those settings. So you can basically add, say, the whole staff, or just the blog authors, or only specific readers, and you would just enter their email address and save the changes. So,
which is also a great feature, because you can then add parents in if you'd like parents of the students.
Exactly, that would be my next thing in terms of adding somebody who's outside of the domain. You can definitely do that. Again, just make sure that you've got all the right permissions, so that particularly if it's a group blog, so that if more than one student is working on the blog and you decide to add one or two parents, to make sure that all of those parents are in agreement that that sharing that information is acceptable. So that's a little bit on permissions. I'm just going to go back into the slideshow and ask you if you've got any questions around that. Or even feedback. Has anyone used blogs in this way to share with parents and students and collaborative blog writing? No?
Not yet.
Okay.
Alma.
Yes. Michelle.
Yes, I've been. I've got a. No, it's doubling back. I can't talk. I've got an echo.
Oh, okay.
We can hear you fine, though.
We can hear you.
Okay, I'll try and ignore myself. I've got one school that are using blogs, which they've made public.
Oh, great.
The idea being that a blog is for a wide audience. And I think I may have mentioned to some people that one of the students wrote a book review, and the author of that book actually commented back to the child. And I think it's important to teach them to be safe, but not to be too locked down.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's great, and that students to receive feedback from somebody they're studying about would have been quite important. Have you had any feedback about what the reaction was? Or?
I got a phone call from the class teacher almost immediately. They were very excited.
Yeah. I hear about that through Twitter and somebody tweeting back at comments. So
that's right. So I guess when we're first starting out, having parents as an audience isn't a bad idea. But I think if we can move towards having public blogs where possible.
Yeah.
That's
I agree.
good.
And Michelle, I can see stages happening there because I can see parents, and then you could actually get a colleague who would like to then comment back and forth between classes, and you could actually stage your release the challenge away from the blog up.
That's right, but people also get a bit precious about parents seeing other children's work, so you need to work around that as well.
Good point.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Michelle. Perhaps we can have to those blogs on the slideshow later on, and as people are referring to it later, they'll be able to click through and have a look.
Hi, Alma.
Yes.
It's Mary from Belfield.
Hi, Mary.
We've just started a Stage 3 blog where the teachers put up something for the children to comment on. But we wanted to open it up to a wider audience because they're doing a thing about culture across the world. So we'd love to get in contact with other schools from other countries. But I'm just trying to work out how to do that.
I've got a suggestion. There's a website called Quad Blogging, and they're on Quad Blogging, QUAD. And what that is where you have 4 classes from, it could be around the world or in your area, and you rotate. So one school is the focus, where they do the writing, and the other 3 schools respond. And then each week in the month it rotates. Now we're getting close to the beginning of a new year overseas, so now might be a time to look into that website.
Okay.
I'll see if I can find some information for you.
Great,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Michelle. There's also, you might also like to look through Edmodo communities. They often run live conferences and live feeds and talk about how Edmodo is used. But a lot of the time, because in Edmodo you can embed Google Docs, and blogs are definitely an option. So that would be a nice way, an easy way for you to find a school to connect with.
Thank you.
Yeah, Greg, were you going to say something earlier?
Oh, no, just that I've put a post on your blog.
Okay, great.
The other thing, can I just jump in there? I get extreme satisfaction from just spending about 20 minutes a week going into blogs and actually commenting on kids' blog posts. And the number of emails from teachers I get is amazing, just thanking me for taking that time. But it's actually a win-win situation because it's a real feel-good activity. The other thing that I often find is on Twitter, you'll find people looking for participants to blog to and from the class blogs. I also noticed that within our own system, we have people who have set up their blogs, whether it's WordPress or Blogger, and they follow each other's blogs, and so there's a direct link from one blog to the other, so they work in a little group almost.
Yeah. So it might be even an idea, because this has come up, to share, if you have your own blog at the end of this, at the end of the session today, perhaps if you wouldn't mind sharing it, just pop it on the new slide, or I can just check the edit settings here on the presentation, or you can email it through and we'll edit later, so that we can start modelling that practice. And the next thing I wanted to talk about was posts and comments, and I think we've covered that a little bit, talking about commenting on students' blogs and making sure that we're contributing, but also it's such an enjoyable aspect of teaching, being able to comment and give feedback to students anytime, for them to be able to see it and get excited, and then to have authors and really that real world audience comment back is important. So check the settings, make sure that that comments are enabled, so that students can receive comments, and same with your own blogs.
Do you want to talk about moderation?
Yes, I just briefly wanted to mention that in terms of, and I just alluded to this earlier, that you might choose to moderate the comments. So what that means is, I can't click on this one.
Can you zoom in? You maybe Command plus zoom in, see what happens.
I'll just go out and go into demonstration mode, into posts and comments. And you can always click on the side of the question mark to in Blogger settings to really check and do a Google search if you're not sure, or post a comment to the Google Guides to be able to check whether certain comments are appropriate. You can set up moderation, so you can set up the moderation for comments for always or sometimes or never. And as you can see, that when if someone comments, you'll get an email or notifying you that a comment is ready and waiting for you to check, and then you can approve that comment or reject in some cases. So it is really good to scaffold a good practice of being a good digital citizen with students, so that the comments don't turn into something that's perhaps malicious or even not deeply contributing to the content of the blog and the feedback, that the feedback is scaffolded and modelled to students as we comment, so that they learn, because they will probably try and the fad does fade. And again, I've often, depending on the purpose, I've often said to students to disable comment location or to hide it. So you can do that, or you can embed it so that depending on when you're commenting and where you're commenting from, that actually shows up on the blog. So for students, they might not want their location to be disclosed with everybody in the world every time they comment. So it's a good practice to mention to students to perhaps hide their comment location. I'll just go back into that presentation again and go through the gadgets. I found gadgets really great in teaching students how to communicate their message more effectively. They love doing the search. They just love customizing so much, and so do I. Doing a search for a new gadget, and also finding new gadgets somewhere else online and embedding them into your blog. For those of you who are wondering what a gadget is, it's sometimes referred to as a widget. You might have heard that term. And it's just a little application that's embedded inside your blog, like a little app on the side that streams and collects and collates and organizes certain data. So for us teachers having Google+, you can have a Google+ gadget, for example, in your blogger, so that you can see your followers.
The one that I find to be most popular with students is cluster maps. And what cluster maps will do, it will put a little red dot on a map of the world of all the people and where they come from who visit your blog. So it's a really lovely way for the kids to say, wow, my voice is being heard in X, Y, and Z. But it shows you in a visual way where those people are from. It's
very exciting when the map gets more and more red. So. The other one is a little Favicon. As you know, I'll just show you what I mean by that. If you have a look at my screen, on the top here, I've got all the different tabs open, and the B's are blogger, clearly. Some of them blog other people's blogs. Some of them, this one's WordPress, that blog that I was telling you about earlier, so it's got a W. It's really fun to be able to identify what those tabs, if you have a lot of tabs open, and working with CloudShare and Google Docs and so many apps and documents open all the time, it's a really good way to get organised and get to things quickly and be able to switch from one to another, like I've tried to do today. But the favicons basically allow you to do that. So just going over here. So if you go into your layout, which was on the previous slide, you can go, there's a little gadget here, you can edit that gadget and upload a file. So I've already had a little file there, but I can choose a different file, I can choose a pair this time, and just save it. And there's the little pair, and it will appear. I can save my arrangement as well. It's not very great, but now that little pair will start appearing every time where there's a little B, where there's the blogger B, the pair will appear instead. So you can distinguish like that, especially if you've got 10 blogs by 10 different students, you might be able to identify them like that, have their little faces or something. Adding gadgets is simple. I don't know if I need to take you through that whole process, but basically you can search for some basic Google gadgets, you can go through more gadgets, or you can even add your own if you find them online, and have a little play with that and see what the different gadgets do. You can drag your layouts around however you like, so you can choose to move those gadgets up and down on your blog post, and I might even try just show you what that looks like.
And Alma, can you tell us what program you used to create your Favicon?
That one was just one that came with the Mac. You can use Photoshop, or you can use any photo, even Preview, and for PC people. You might be able to use any program that's available for free online. There's actually quite a few that were mentioned in the Google Guides discussion forum, but I can add some on the slide. There's a lot of free software out there to manipulate images.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, they just have to be 16 by 16 pixels most of the time. Yeah, in terms of size. So here are the gadgets. They just appear on the side. This one's just a Google Plus followers gadget. It's just an archive, so you can change the order of how your blog's archived, customized. This one's a gadget that imports all of my Digo links. So every time I link something, it will appear on my blog. So staff, because this is a blog to communicate e-learning with staff at my school, they can access some of the most recent links I've got bookmarked. So yeah, hopefully this is just going to go back. It is? Yes. Fantastic. Michelle, you did ask a question about the Favicon, but are there any other questions or something that perhaps is far too obvious that I'm covering and you'd like me to go into more depth?
Maybe to show what that test blog actually looks like, because I think we only saw like the back end of it. We didn't actually see the blog.
So that's in terms of publishing and creating your blogs. So if you go into that test.
Okay, well, you're doing it now. Yeah.
So this is, oops, that's not how it looks. This is basically, I just inserted the slideshow that we're talking about now here using HTML code. Different blogs will do things slightly differently, will allow you to do it. So this might look a little bit intimidating to some of you if you haven't worked with HTML, but don't worry. Basically, all you do is you write your blog, and say you've got a presentation, a Google presentation to show, like the blogger one that we were just in. You would publish that presentation to the web. You would get the embed code there. I have unticked require viewers to sign in with the Senior Sydney account, but you can tick that. I'd leave it unticked if you're publishing with students. Copy that code, so Command C, and you can close that now. You can do other customizing, and then you can go back into your blog post. I'll just go back into HTML where that was. This is the code, so I'll just get rid of it. and show you what it looked like before. So it was just blank. You go into your HTML and you just post it anywhere. Now, the width and the height is something that you can look through in this tiny little writing of the code. And because the width says 960, that's quite wide and it will cover a lot of my blog. So I'm just going to reduce that to maybe 450, and the height can be even less. It can be 349, keeping that rectangular format. And I can just save. I can also preview the blog and see what it might look to the world. So that's what that looks like. It's got a little bit of text and the presentation embedded, and you'll be able to flip through the slides. And it's not letting me do that now because it's in preview. So we've got here the contributors on the side as well. So when you're publishing your blog, if you've got a list of students, all of their names. So if it's fantastic for projects. If you've got 5 teams of students, you can basically navigate the blog and see which group of students is working on which project. So that's sort of how I've used it in lessons, but might be different. So this one, if I go back to compose, that's where it is. It just goes back to that slightly better view. And now I can publish my post, and anybody following my blog, depending on my setting, might get a notification that I have published the post. And it's asking me to share it on Google+. I will say no, because this one's test and it's quite blank and people might wonder what I've posted. And again, you can just save it as a preview and publish later. So that's a little bit about how to post.
And so what does it look like on the blog? Because you're still looking at the preview, the management there, yeah.
And just go to my test. Oops, view blog. And there it is.
So that's what the world sees.
So this is what the world sees, and looks like Greg has illustriously added a few other things for you to think about. It. Someone dropped out.
Yeah.
And we can ask people to leave some comments and so on. Another really great tool, if you go to your post, which is where that post is sitting, you can see when you've got multiple collaborators, multiple people working on the blog, you can see Greg's post separately. So as a teacher, you can go and have a look at Greg's post, so you can have a look at my post, you can have a look at our post combined through the blog. If I just go into the blog I just posted, you can have a look here on the side that there is an option to label your blogs. I strongly recommend that you scaffold to the students and perhaps direct them in how to label their blogs. And I know we sort of have to model that practice. And labels are really about comments or topics or concepts that are talked about in that project that the students are working on. They can also be used for subject identifying, so labels can include, one blog can be labelled with more than one label, so you just have to hit that label, PLN, you can insert blogger, Web2, because there is a little bit of information about that there. And
so Alma, essentially labels are tags, right?
Sorry?
Labels are tags in this case?
Exactly, yes. So different blogs different types of blogs refer to these in a different way, but the way to recognize them, if you're new to all of the language, is just by that little tag, which just looks like a cardboard label that you can buy at the shops and stick on the jar of jam with a piece of string. So it's basically tagging it and putting an identifier to that blog post. So topics, ideas explored, And you could have them preset for students, or you could also see how they classify information and ask them to identify their own labels. And that's quite an interesting exercise if you ever do it, because I found that in a class of 20, sometimes just a couple of students are able to classify, which sometimes is a skill that we take for granted, I think. So anyway, so now I can update my blog because I've added a couple of labels. Before I do that, I might like to share this with other people, and I can also edit this link. But for some reason, I think because I'm in this view, it's not letting me do that.
Just hit done.
It's not. Yeah. You can edit this link. I might just put some extra notes because it's not letting me edit that at the moment. I'll put extra notes in the slide. Just going back to the presentation, there's a little bit there about labels, and also you can see how here you can choose to have an automatic or a custom link. So if you choose, I really don't know why I'm not able to do it now, but this is the same blog post. If you choose custom, you can actually write in a unique URL. So it could say something like science group 1 experiments, and it could even have your school shortened name, and that can be a unique identifier for your class. But I'd suggest to keep it fairly short. They do so as unique as they are, they're also not always available in the way that you would like them. So are there any questions around posting and options and so on? No?
What I like about labels too is that if someone for your blog or your blog post, those labels actually come up as part of the search. So you can identify which posts you want with which tags, and it makes it easy for people to find it.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. A little bit about templates. I mean, we all know, I don't need to show you how to customize your blog. The main reason why I pull this up is to draw your attention to the Blogger Template Designer, which sometimes people overlook, which allows you to adjust the width of the blog post. So if we're asking students to reflect at length, so say at 300 or 400 or 500 words or more in one blog post, which maybe you wouldn't often do, but adjusting the width is really important because it allows you to see, you and the students, to see the text a little bit more succinctly and on one page. So considering most schools are working on iPads or smaller screen laptops and MacBook Airs and so on, it is something to think about. It makes your life a little bit easier as well when you're reading. So that's the main reason to point this out. This is a fun tip I like to do with students if they're studying a particular historical event or a person and you'd like them to assume a role of that character, say Captain Cook, and track his voyages. They could actually blog about it, pretending they're Captain Cook, for example, and insert locations in their blog posts. To give them a bit more of a connection to what they're actually, where in the world those places are. So it's just a fun one. I don't know if anyone's used.
Yeah, Alma, I just noticed somebody. I'm just wondering if anyone's got their microphone not muted or unmuted. If you could mute it, we're just getting a little bit of feedback here. That's all. Could you just check your microphones? Thanks, that they're all muted. Thanks. Sorry, Alma. Sounds like it's gone.
I've also, in this slide, I've inserted an example of a student blog. I have to get out of the presentation mode to show you. It's this one here. Again, if the blog's left, she has chosen to leave the blog quite narrow to insert images and for people to scroll through. But this was a documenting visual arts process and development of her body of work. So students often tend to choose to do that. So I thought I'd pop that link in so you can browse through that blog. You may find that some images are missing on some pages, so she's probably not linked some of those well. So make sure that your students do that properly. And if you have any examples that you'd like to share of other students' blog, like Michelle, you mentioned, that I'll just pop them on this page as well for future reference. A few teachers' blogs. I mentioned Greg's blog. There's also Simon's blog you might like to click on and browse through. There's a very long list of education blogs that I found, just mostly teachers or educators or university educators talking about great use, great ways to incorporate the use of blogs and e-learning.
Yeah. Just Michelle and Chris, I think you might have your you'll need to mute your microphone. Getting a bit of feedback there.
And it's a really great idea if you do have your own blogs, and even if you don't, finding a way to bookmark that best suits you. There's so many different ways, but I generally tend to just follow a few people I like, and this particular blog won the best class edu blog in last year. So I thought I'd just pop that on so you can see some good examples, and there are some really good examples. There's a few primary examples in the checkout also section as well. So
can I be a little self-indulgent here too? Can I offer one? It's Ashley as a party. She's one of our teachers. Is she on the list?
I don't think so.
So she has a blog, and it's an excellent professional blog with reflections of her practice. And if you wanted to have a look at how a teacher could use a blog in that way, she would be an excellent example. So if you look up Ashley as a party, her blog will come up.
Okay. Is it a blog?
It's a WordPress blog.
A WordPress. Okay, so Ashley as a party. Yep. And if you want to learn a little bit more, you can always do the Web 2 online course or direct some teachers at your school to sign up for the course and start blogging themselves. So
I'm just got it
Blake
now,
might like to mention that.
What's that, sorry?
Would you like to explore or mention?
Yeah, the Web 2 course. So look, I know a number of you have either done the course or at least aware of the course. You're required to actually keep a blog as part of doing the course. So if you've got colleagues who are wanting to explore more about using Web 2 tools or want to get started with using a blog, this is a great place to learn how to put a blog together for a specific purpose around your own professional development, and certainly explore a whole range of complementary Web 2 tools that you can discuss and blog about. It also brings you into a wider community of bloggers. We have at the moment, in fact, if you go to just go to My Diocese, where it says My Diocese there, you can see that we've got participants from Bathurst. Actually, just go back and just click on My Diocese, and you'll see the icons come up. We've got participants from a number of different dioceses around Australia. So you'll see that if you do the course now, you'll get access to the blogs that are being produced by, say, teachers in Melbourne or Rockhampton or Townsville or Wollongong or Bathurst, etc. I'd encourage you to take a look at the Web 2 course if you haven't done it already, and certainly mention it to any of your staff who are considering using Blogger with their students or want to learn more about using Blogger for their own professional development.
Can I just mention stats as well? I'm a blogaholic, so I love my stats. But in a classroom situation, for the kids to realise that they have an authentic audience, I think is really important. And my last class would come in on a Monday morning and go, oh wow, we got 300 hits over the weekend. And then they'd go and check their comments.
This will have no hits.
But you can see there, when you get up a blog that has multiple entries, you can not only see what parts of the country they come from, you can see what sort of browser they've used to access your blog, you can break your information down really nicely, you can see which blog posts actually get the most hits, and you can start to see what's a successful post. So you can have those conversations with your students about what is it about that post, what sort of what is it that I can break down and replicate in a post. But yeah, it's a great tool, and from a motivation activity, I just love to get the kids to be checking their stats on a reasonably regular basis.
I'm just putting in Ashley as a party's blog now onto that. It's slide 22. So if you're looking at the slide now, I'll just put the link in now. So just bear with me for a tick. Try it again. That's the one. Apply that.
So Greg's just posting a link under Simon's blogs.
Yeah, that'll come if you refresh that. That'll pop up. There it is now. So if you click that link, Alma, that should pop up, and you can show everyone Ashley's blog, which looks pretty impressive. Where she talks about the benefits. That's the one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what's impressive about this is that this was an activity that they were asked to do as part of their training at ACU, so that the students all kept a blog for the last 2 years of their training. This young lady has maintained that practice through her first year of teaching. So she's a first year teacher, and I think she has done an absolutely fabulous job. Mm-hmm. If you read some of the comments there from experienced teachers about the reflections on her practice, it's a fabulous read.
Thanks, it's great to share. Are there any questions, or does anybody have a blog they might like to share that we can add to the list as an exemplary blog, or something in particular that you would like to try in the classroom and perhaps get some help or suggestions, or perhaps to invite us to comment on your student blogs or your own blogs?
I'd love to add our Stage 3 blog just to get some outside comments on for the kids.
Okay, so would you be able to send us a link when you get started with those blogs? And
Or pop it in the slide deck, then we can all get access to it.
It's just a it's a teacher-created blog that the students can comment on.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Sorry, I have to go. Thank you very much.
No problems, thank you.
So if there's no other questions, it's just coming up past 4, so we're finished nice and early. I just want to maybe actually, Alma, if you can pull up the schedule for the VC sessions coming up. So we've got another VC session coming up. CloudShare Support Session coming up on Thursday, the 22nd of August, where we're going, Alma will just bring that up now, where we're going to look at using Google Calendar, talking a little bit about how you share calendars, some of the nifty features around calendars. Oh, bad one. Hopefully you've got access to that. That was the schedule that you would have got in order to learn about this blogger. VC. I think it's not going to behave itself. You might need to refresh or something like that. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So we've got Thursday the 22nd. We've got the using the calendar in the classroom. And then on Thursday the 5th of September, we'll be doing a session on building teacher capacity with the Australian curriculum, where we'll be looking at, thanks Alma, we'll be looking at how you can leverage some of the features of CloudShare, some of the tools in CloudShare to help with the Australian curriculum, whether it's working on programs, whether it's going through some of the modules in the Board of Studies Australian curriculum site, and understanding some of the resources that you can use when you're applying the Australian curriculum at your school. Lastly, just a point about today's session. It has been recorded. In fact, the recording's still going. So what we normally do is we get that recording. It normally takes us about a week to slice and dice it and edit it, and then we'll make that recording available. What we'll probably do is we'll make it available via the new CEO eLearning portal. So do you want to bring up the portal there just to show folks? If you want another plug, so another, as in the portal. So just make a tab. And,
I'll just go through.
Yeah. So, and there it goes. There it is. And Jason Ranieri, who's on the call, largely responsible for this new portal. So what we'll do is we'll put a link somewhere on there. It'll probably be in the latest news section or on the CloudShare section to these videos. So you'll see not just this one, but the ones that we did last term and the ones that are coming up for the rest of this term.